There's a request for the brothers to come forward to allow space for the brothers coming in later. Can I ask you please to come forward with the recitation of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. وأعوذ به من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أحل لكم ليلة الصيام الرفث إلى نسائكم هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls and the enlightenment of the hearts, and for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Savior, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. Names, epithets, or titles are indeed part and parcel of the lives of human beings across history. Many a times you and I have favorable names that we'd like others to call us, or indeed our names that have been designated to us by our parents is something which is beloved to many people. In other words, when we are addressed by our name or our title or a particular description, it gives us a sense of identity and at the same time a sense of enjoyment or satisfaction. At the same time, there are people who sometimes feel embarrassed when it comes to their names. I remember I read the BBC report a few years ago that reported that a number of people had interesting names. One individual, one lady, her first name was Hazel, but unfortunately her surname was Nut. And likewise, you have a lady whose parents called her Mary, but they forgot that the surname was Christmas. But arguably amongst the most interesting names was an individual by the name of Justin, but his surname was Case. Yes? So the idea is that, I know you're fasting, just in case. The idea that we are presented is what? Is that sometimes names are a source of pride and happiness for many people. When it comes to the Holy Sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, there is a beautiful story in which during the holy month of Ramadan, our holy sixth Imam, during midday, in the heat of Madinatul Munawwara, was seen working and dripping with sweat. Somebody came to him and said, Yabna Rasulullah, is this the time to work? You are fasting, it's the month of Ramadan, and you are sweating. The Imam alayhi salam responded beautifully. He said, Ladhatun nida ansani ta'ab. The sweetness of being labeled in a certain title by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made me forget the hardship. Meaning what? The Imam alayhi salam was referring to Surah Al-Baqarah and specifically verse 183, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. Imam alayhi salam said that Allah is addressing us as the believers. This is a source and a sense of pride for us. Therefore, being in a state of understanding that I am one of the believers makes me happy and makes me forget the tiredness and the hardship. And this is a beautiful realization when we come to examine the few verses in Surah Al-Baqarah that discuss fasting and discuss the different elements, whether it's social, jurisprudential, historic, or spiritual, associated with Siyam. We find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from verse 183 to verse 187 in Surah Al-Baqarah. This is dedicated to the discussion on the subject of fasting and the holy month of Ramadan. Let's look at the first few verses very briefly and then focus primarily the discussion on verse 187, which is often not discussed during the month of Ramadan. The Quran tells us, first of all, that it is obligatory upon believers to observe the fast, as people in the past had indeed observed the fast in order for them to reach God consciousness and the awareness of the presence of the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. Then the Quran says, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ, that the comparison between the month of Ramadan and the rest of the year is that the number of days is limited. The Quran uses ma'dudat in another place in Surah Yusuf, where the Quran says, وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ دَرَاهِمَ مَعْدُودَةٍ, that when they purchased Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was in the well and the caravan came and purchased him, they gave a very small amount of money to purchase him. And the Quran says ma'duda means it's very little, it's very few. And the Quran says أَيَّامًا ma'duda, it is only a few numbers of days that you and I are ordained to observe the fasting. And that's why the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in a beautiful narration says, if people understood and were cognizant of the excellence of the month of Ramadan, they would have supplicated to Allah to make the entire year Ramadan. If only people knew, the Prophet of Islam would say. Yes, the Quran says أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Then there is the jurisprudential exclusion. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Whomsoever is suffering from an illness and is traveling, then they are excluded or excused from the obligation of the fast. Indeed, that is established with its very much description and detailed presentation by our fuqaha in Rasail al-Amaliyya. Allah says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Very important to understand as we fast for 19-20 hours. Allah says, I want you not to go through hardship, but in fact, I want the best for you. I want you to understand that it is good for you, because the verses then continue and says, وَإِن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. If you observe fast, it is best for you. I tell you, the ulama of tafsir say, if today you have a doctor or a GP, you go to them and you have an illness, they say to you, my advice is to take this medicine. You go home and you say, no, I'm not interested in taking the medicine. Yet you have the best physician that exists in the world, tells you the same thing. I can assure you that the majority of us will follow the recommendation by the expert, the best, because they have a higher degree of knowledge and expertise. What about when Allah, our Creator, says fasting is best for you? وَإِن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It is not you and I or anybody else telling us that this is indeed something which brings forth benefit for you and I. It is the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's informing us. And indeed the verses continue to describe شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان, describing the excellence of the month of Ramadan, in that it is the only month of the entire year that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has mentioned by name in the Quran. You will not find any other month mentioned by name, which highlights what? Its importance and its status, which is above all the other months of the year. The Quran then discusses فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُومْ, whomsoever observes the month or observes the crescent, then they must uphold the fasting, and many other rulings that exist, which is discussed in books of tafsir. I would like to look at very briefly verse 187 of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is related, and it's the final ayah discussing fasting in this glorious chapter of the Holy Quran. In order to understand verse 187, let me give you a background of the sababun nuzul, the reason why this verse was revealed. Many of us may not be aware, but for the first few years in Madinatul Munawwarah, there were much more restrictions when it comes to fasting than there are today, when you and I observe the fasting. Meaning what? That the ulama tell us from the narrations of the Ahl al-Bayt that exist, that the believers at that time, when it came to fasting, it was not permissible for them, even at night, after they had broken the fast, to have an intimate relationship with their wife. It was not allowed. So the entire year of the entire month of Ramadan, the physical relationship between husband and wife was not permissible. Can you imagine? To the extent that today people complain, they say, fasting today is very difficult, I cannot bear it, heat, thirst, tiredness. Can you imagine that restriction? That existed, yes. That was practiced by Muslims for a number of years. Although Allama Hafiz Jalaluddin al-Suyuti in his tafsir, Durr al-Manthur, says some of the Sahaba, and he mentions them, because he mentions them, I mention them, it is not to attack. He says some of the Sahaba, including Umar ibn al-Khattab, broke this and used to have physical relationship with their wife at night in the month of Ramadan. Yes, that was not the only restriction that existed. There was a second restriction. Do you know what that was? That was that if an individual does not break the fast after Maghrib, and then sleeps, when they wake up from sleep, even if it is before Fajr, they are not allowed to eat anything. Until the next day, they have to continue fasting. That was also a restriction. This was found in a hadith from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. That we are told the reason why this verse was revealed, there was a man by the name of Al-Khabbab ibn Jubayr. Who was he? He was the brother of the individual Abdullah ibn Jubayr, who was placed as the head of the archers in the Mount of Uhud, which was to protect the Muslims from the attack from behind. Yes, and he was martyred alongside 12 others who obeyed the command of the Prophet and stayed, whereas the other, maybe about 50, descended down the mount and wanted to collect the booties in the famous Battle of Uhud. His brother was elderly, and one day he came during the month of Ramadan, and he said to his family, "Is there iftar?" They said, "Wait, we are preparing iftar, but please don't go to sleep." Yes, they told him, don't go to sleep. Unfortunately, he was tired. He went to sleep. He woke up. He couldn't have iftar because of the ruling. And next day, he was with the Muslims as well as the Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen digging the trench of Khandaq, because the digging of the trench happened during the month of Ramadan. And the battle of Khandaq happened towards the end of the month of Ramadan, at the beginning of Shawwal. Whilst he was digging the trench, he fell unconscious because he had not eaten or drank anything. And he continued till the next day. And the Prophet of Islam indeed felt some sadness for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah of the Holy Quran, which gave rukhsah, which gave permission for two things. The first is this: أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now it is permitted for you to have the physical, intimate relationship with your wives at night during the month of Ramadan. Incidentally, we have a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen, as well as a discussion by ulama, that it is makruh to have the physical relationship and the eve of the first night of the Hijri months, except the first night of the month of Ramadan. It is mustahab. It is good, mustahab, to have this physical, intimate relationship between the husband and wife on the eve of the first day. I remember one of the ulama was saying, I was discussing this on the second day of Ramadan, or a day like this, first day, and one of the ulama, one of the students stood up and said, Maulana, why didn't you tell me this yesterday? I could have utilized. The alim said to him, don't worry, in Islam there is qada. It's okay. The idea that exists is what? Allah says, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. Now, there is a very interesting Quranic point here. The Quran, when it comes to dealing with certain sensitive areas and subjects, uses words which are appropriate, which denotes modesty and respect and chastity. Because today, what do we have? We are bombarded by social media and the media in general, and by people, interaction with people, that the language today leaves a lot to be desired. That people use certain terms which are inappropriate when they describe certain aspects and certain actions. The Quran comes forward and says rafath. Rafath in Arabic is what? Rafath is what the lovers speak to each other in private. Of course, the ulama say this denotes the physical contact and the relationship that happens between the husband and wife. Yes, however, the Quran is very importantly telling us a very significant message, and that is, as believers, we should not be drawn into this tide of using whatever term people use that we should also use out there. Yes, if it is deemed to be inappropriate, if it does not denote some kind of respect, some kind of chastity or modesty, the Quran then comes forward utilizing the ruling here to say this: هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the midst of the discussion of the verses relating to Siyam and the month of Ramadan, wants us to appreciate the importance of marital relationship and the key emphasis placed in Islamic teachings on having a strong bond between the husband and wife. Meaning, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala uses the word libas. Libas means, or translated literally, as dress. And what is the function of the dress? Number one, it protects, doesn't it? It protects the human being from the heat and the cold. Hence, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala wants the husband and the wife to protect each other. It is sad, sometimes I receive emails or I sit with couples where I find the problems between the husband and wife are due to what? Due to the fact that they have disclosed each other's deficiencies or faults to other people. Or they have done it to their in-laws, yes? And this is a problem that between the husband and wife, this هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُمْ, they protect each other. They should be the best of friends of each other. Unless it's absolutely necessary and they have reached a point where they are not able to advance and they need to solicit the help of a scholar or someone who is an experienced or has expertise in area of dealing with marital relationship, then they can perhaps discuss some elements. But the Quran says they must protect each other and not jump to conclusions straight away about the other. Remember reading that there was a lady who was Ukrainian, and her husband was Polish. Yes, the husband went to his parents and said that my wife, I am 100% sure that she wants to kill me. That I have evidence that she has intention to kill me. The parents made a big issue. They went asking for divorce. The Ukrainian woman came and said, why? What is the evidence that you have that I wish to kill you? He said, I went to the bathroom and I found the poison. I never bought a poison. He said, yes, I saw a jar. On it, it says Polish remover. The idea is what? Sometimes you and I jump into conclusions straight away, involve people. Allah says, هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنْ. What are the other functions of a libas? What does it do? Not only does it conceal, not only does it give us protection, but it's also a source of beauty and pride, isn't it? We take extra care to choosing the dress code for us. Likewise, what is it? It is a means by which human beings obtain their identity. The way we dress gives us a source of identity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the month of Ramadan, deliberately and intentionally, no doubt, it is being mentioned in the ayahs describing fasting and siyam, the importance of keeping a strong marital relationship. Yes, many people don't understand this. They say, why are you talking about marriage in Mahi Ramadan? Allah is speaking about marriage in Mahi Ramadan. Yes, He's talking about the importance of it in Surah Al-Baqarah, in the verses that describe fasting. Therefore, what a glorious opportunity in this holy month to express love to each other as husband and wife. Yes, not for those who are not married and go express love to someone they don't know. No, but when it comes to marital relationships, it's a good opportunity to present a gift, to present a gesture of thanks and loyalty in the month of Ramadan, going by what the command of the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala says thereafter, Allah knew that you were not able to continue with this restriction, therefore He removed it. فَعَفَى عَنْكُمْ فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَفَى عَنْكُمْ. He has forgiven you and has removed this burden and this restriction from you. فَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Allah then says, then eat and drink. حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ. Drink and eat until you are able to see the white thread from the black thread. There was a man by the name of Uday ibn Hatim at the time of the Holy Prophet, well-known Sahabi. He came to the Holy Prophet when he heard this particular verse. He came and said, Ya Rasulullah, I've clocked it. You know, this, mashallah, pseudo-alims we have out there today. You know, I call them the Facebook alims. Yes, he came, he said, Rasulullah said, what is it? He said, I had a white string and a black string, and I looked at them like this, and I recognized which is stronger. So Allah is talking about this. The Prophet smiled. He said, this is not what the Almighty is talking about. It is not the thread that you are holding. It is what? The distinguishing of the lightness of the day from the darkness of the night. That is indeed what is being mentioned here. And indeed, it's a discussion which is quite lengthy by the ulama regarding the designation and the calculation of the correct time for Fajr. The difference between Fajr al-Sadiq and Fajr al-Kadhib, the true Fajr and the one that is not the true Fajr. And this discussion is lengthy and will take some time, which we do not have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. This is important that I would like your attention. The Almighty says, after beginning the fast from what? From the Fajr. And after giving permission for the night time, for that relationship and eating and drinking. And by the way, this should not be seen or deemed to be the permission to do whatever we like in the night of the Mahi Ramadan. Because some people say, you know, fasting, no problem. I will hold myself from sinning, because the real fast is to what? Is to control the senses, the eyes, the ears, the tongue, no doubt. Yet they say when it comes to night time, then I am free to do whatever I can, yes? You only need to go to Middle East and other parts in India, Pakistan, and see the production and the presentation of soap operas and such TV series, which increases during the month of Ramadan, isn't it? People spend the night in watching these kind of things. They think the night is what? Excuse. 20 hours, let me relax. And according to the youth, chillax for 4 hours. Yes, why you? But the month of Ramadan, no, is an entire month of ibadah and an assault course for self-development and self-spirituality. Yes, so and therefore the night is also quite critical. Allah says, ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. This is a discussion between what? Many of the jurists of the school of Ahl al-Bayt and the jurists of our brothers from the Ahl al-Sunnah. They come forward from the other schools of thought and they say that this layl denotes what? It denotes the sun set. Whereas the school of Ahl al-Bayt, many of our ulama, not the majority, but not all, because some have difference of opinion, but the majority say no, the Quran says layl. And if you go to other verses in the Quran, like chapter 17, verse 87, Allah says, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ إِلَىٰ غَسَقِ اللَّيْلِ. Here the Almighty uses duluk al-shams, which means sunset. Then He says ghasaq al-layl, the darkness of the night. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has made a distinguishing factor, a difference between sunset and night. The ulama say here, Allah says atimmu siyama ila al-layl, not sunset. In other words, there must not be any more of what? Of the light of the sun that exists. There must be complete darkness. That is how we understand layl. That is how we understand night, as the Quran has itself made a difference between the two. Hence, this particular addition is added to what? To ghurub, in order for it to become maghrib, in order for it to be fulfilled, and the correct time is observed for salah and what? And the breaking of the fast. The verse then continues to discuss what? Continues to discuss i'tikaf and the importance of i'tikaf during the month of Ramadan. Then finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says tilka hududullahi fala ta'taduha. Very important. Allah says these are the limits that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has placed, therefore you must not transgress it. It's an important message for you and I as we observe fasting, and that is what? During our lifetime. And you know, one thing beautiful about the month of Ramadan is that not only it should be observed in the best possible way and the fruits be indeed taken and utilized, as the Holy Prophet of Islam has mentioned that we are guests of the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala, but no doubt strength should be obtained in this month for the rest of the year, definitely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is telling us there are restrictions, there are limitations, there are hudud. We must not transgress these hudud. Meaning what? Allah doesn't say do not go over it. فَلَا تَقْرَبُوهَا, the Quran says rather. Quran says do not even get close to it. And that is why Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Imam al-Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi mentions this at the end of the khutbah of the Holy Prophet when he asked the Prophet of Islam what is the best deed to perform in this holy month. The Prophet of Islam would say al-wara' an maharimillah. Wara' is what? Wara' is the highest degree of taqwa, which means when it comes to an area which is debated, which is an area which may fall under transgression or sin, an individual from the school of Ramadan and Ahl al-Bayt stops and says, I am not taking the risk. That is wara'. Because it is not worth taking the risk. Yes? Sometimes people ask questions and indeed go at length about certain music tracks. Certain individuals who are musicians or nasheed reciters. And is this halal? Is this haram? Is this halal? Is this haram? I remember once in Muharram, I was in one of the Jamaats in America and they were taking me to a majlis and one of the mu'mineen said, Alhamdulillah, I have you with me for the next 15 minutes. I said, Bismillah, you have a question? He said, no. I said, what is it? He said, I have a few tracks. Can you listen and tell me halal, haram, halal, haram? This is an issue for us to keep in mind, that we must not always stretch to the limit. This wara' is of the utmost importance to keep the spirit of the holy month of Ramadan of Iman and Taqwa. And the final part of the verse concludes with what it began a few verses earlier. 187 ends with tattaqoon, isn't it? Just like how the first verse describing fasting, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, the final ayah also says that to observe this taqwa. Why? Because on the day of Eid, mu'mineen, brothers and sisters, people will receive certificates and some will not receive certificates. You have people who will receive certificates from the malaika, either with certain different grades. And indeed, the best amongst the individuals who attain the highest degrees of taqwa in the month of Ramadan. Meaning what? And I end with this, that when you and I are fasting and we are thirsty or we are hungry and there is nobody watching, there is nobody looking, yes? And we are sitting in our desk at work, or we are at home, or for the ladies cooking the food, or these days some of the men cooking the food, whatever it is, we have an opportunity to eat, yes? An opportunity physically. But the vast majority, despite the fact that there is nobody watching them, will not. Why? Because they say, if I do, I will break my fast. But who is watching? Yes? most of us reach a level of taqwa in the month of Ramadan. We are cognizant of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us. Yes, therefore we will not break the fast, even though nobody is watching. Yes, Allah is saying, take that spirit and live for the next 11 months until the month of Ramadan. Utilize the energy and the fuel to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The final point, and I keep saying final, the spiritual tip of the day is with regards to the hadith from the sixth Imam, which says, tasahharu, have sahari, even if it is a sip of water. فَصَلَوَاتُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْمُسَحِّرِينَ. Allah sends His salawat, His barakah on those who observe the sahari. Meaning what? Meaning that even if we are, for example, full and we're not eating anything, and we should not be filling ourselves just because we are fasting for a long period of time, but it is recommended at Sahari time to indeed have some water and to supplicate and to recite Quran, to be included amongst those who are considered as al-Musahireen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our a'mal and make us of the individuals who attain the highest degree of taqwa in the month of Ramadan. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.